As we are now multiple pages into the flashback for the history of One Piece relating both to Elbaf and the Rocks Pirates, a question has started to emerge in my mind, and I wonder if it's appearing in others. Is this flashback going to crash? I mean, don't get me wrong, I do think this whole flashback has a lot of merit, as it does give us very important information, and it is awesome, but there does come a time in many One Piece flashbacks that we hit a, let's call it, problem point. And I'm really hoping that this flashback doesn't hit that, but it does feel like we could be getting awfully close to one. So let's delve into it, what's great about it, and what could possibly burn out about the flashback that might make people not as enthusiastic about it. First, let's clarify a couple things. I love a lot of One Piece flashbacks. I love, obviously Bonnie and Kuma's. I love a majority of the Oden flashback. I love a lot of the way that flashbacks guarantee information to the audience, and even in many ways make us feel things for characters that are no longer around and we've never even met up to that point. And this flashback has not been any different, as it has really expanded upon the Rocks Pirates, which is a detail that I really like, but we're also given a very good picture of Loki's life and exactly how he's become the way he is, which I think is very important. At the same time, that's also giving us a very good clue into why Harujin is the way he is. And I think that as the flashback has become a flashback within a flashback, there's kind of become an inception problem, in that while Loki's section is important and obviously necessary, it's not really necessary for us to see the Rocks Pirates. Don't get me wrong, it's awesome, but we're dedicating a lot of time to this now, far more than I thought we would when we were initially getting the flashbacks. And this is clearly going to go at least a couple more chapters. And the problem when Oda decides to do a flashback that is this long and this intently detailed is he tends to drag it too long. That is one of the greatest flaws with One Piece backstories. It doesn't really exist in Bonnie and Kuma's, but let's be honest, that's an exception. In almost every other flashback in this series, there's a point where it goes way too long. That's why most people don't watch the last half of Oden's flashback, because most people can't even remember what happened to Oden and how Kaido and Orochi took over the country, because nobody ever watches that because it's not done well. It's too long, it's too boring, and it's too frustrating. I'm vaguely worried we might be approaching a point with this that could happen to the Rocks Pirates, which I'm really hoping Oda doesn't do, and we would just kind of end up cutting back to Loki's backstory, preferably after Rocks falls at God Valley, but there's no guarantee of that. And the reason why this could start to spin out is that there is a lack of interesting development going on here. You're not really going to give any development to characters in the past because we already know all the ones that are alive, and all the ones in the past that we haven't met yet are either in hiding or not around anymore. With the only possible exception here being the possibility that Rocks did in fact give Roger his urge to go find the poneglyphs, but that's the only possibility that's really interesting here. And yeah, that would tie into its second issue, which is that this doesn't really relate to the modern day all that much. The events of God Valley don't really bear much of an interest on what's happening right now to Luffy or to anybody else, and don't get me wrong, I think it's supposed to be more about Loki than anybody else, but we're spending an awful lot of time on something for a character that we're not even entirely sure what his future is going to be. Now, I know a lot of people are going to come in and say, well, it's obviously that because One Piece is kind of based on the Odyssey and that the Rocks' flashback is supposed to be like the Iliad, but there is a problem with that. One is that in general, the Iliad is not that good. It's actually one of my lesser favorite Greek stories, and actually while I love the Odyssey, it is kind of funny that it is essentially the prequel to it. I know that's not how it worked, but that's the way it's being treated here. The second issue is that of the many things about the Iliad, the Rocks flashbacks cannot recreate that because it's not like all of these various pirates are going to get their backstories and we're going to have all of this stuff, and it's being substituted with Shaki, which is interesting. While I love Shaki as a character, it's not exactly like we've had a lot of interaction with her, so the revelation about a lot of this is probably not landing in the way that I think Oda's intending it to. And don't take this as a mistake that I think One Piece is dropping off or anything, because it's not. It's just that we usually go for this system where we have awesome parts of flashbacks, and then the flashbacks tend to drag, and then they end, and we only end up remembering the good part. I suppose we could be seeing another high with this flashback if we were to actually see God Valley, but if I'm also being honest, I don't think Oda's gonna give that to us, because at the end of the day, he has no real interest to. I mean, it's really more of a primer for the events of the current age than it was something he necessarily wanted to show, with, like I said, the only key being that Roger could be getting something important from Rocks at the end of this. But what do you think? Is the flashback going too long? Do you think we're gonna get a crash out soon, or are you liking it and you just want to talk about it in the comments? If you enjoy talking about One Piece, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because we talk about One Piece a lot.